King Charles III's tour of Australia, intended to reinforce ties with the country, has taken a negative turn, becoming marred by controversy, protests, and confrontations. The tensions began to escalate when Independent Senator Lydia Thorpe publicly heckled him during a speech in Canberra, accusing him of genocide against Indigenous Australians and challenging his sovereignty. Her passionate plea for Indigenous land rights, coupled with her statement, "You are not our king," set a tone of discontent among those who feel the monarchy represents colonial oppression. Adding to this, Aboriginal activist Wayne Coco Wharton was arrested while protesting near the Sydney Opera House, where he labelled Charles a king of thieves and liars and attempted to serve a mock arrest notice on the monarch. This incident has intensified criticism, with some claiming that Wharton's arrest is an example of how free speech is being curtailed, particularly when it comes to raising uncomfortable truths about Australia's colonial past. These incidents underscore long-standing tensions in Australia regarding its relationship with the monarchy and Indigenous rights. Many Indigenous activists view Charles's visit as a painful reminder of British colonialism, which led to the dispossession and marginalisation of their ancestors. The protests reflect broader debates about whether Australia should become a republic and sever its ties with the British Crown, especially after the 2023 referendum on Indigenous representation was rejected by voters, leaving unresolved issues of sovereignty and reconciliation. These developments have significantly overshadowed the intended purpose of Charles's visit, leading to a sharp divide in public opinion. While some Australians support the monarchy, others see it as a relic of colonialism, and the protests have only amplified calls for a republic and a reassessment of the nation's colonial history. In King Charles III's recent tour of Australia, a confrontation with Senator Lydia Thorpe gained attention when she publicly heckled the monarch, shouting, "You are not my king," and making a strong statement regarding the legacy of British colonialism in Australia. Thorpe's outburst, which also referenced skull and bones, alludes to the historical atrocities committed by colonial powers, particularly the plundering of Indigenous lands and remains, some of which she claims are still held by the British. This protest signals a growing discontent with the British monarchy among Indigenous activists and sections of the Australian public, as many call for a reckoning with colonial violence and the return of stolen artefacts and ancestral remains. Thorpe's mention of skull and bones is symbolic, drawing attention to both literal and figurative remnants of colonialism. For Indigenous Australians, the remains of their ancestors have been taken from their land, often shipped to Europe, where they ended up in museums and research collections. The phrase evokes these historical wrongs, urging accountability and repatriation. This echoes the broader struggle for recognition of the devastating impacts of colonisation, something the British monarchy has long been associated with. King Charles, despite his role as a largely symbolic figurehead, has not escaped the growing criticism. For many Australians, especially Indigenous people, his ascent to the throne represents continuity with an institution that oversaw and often justified colonial rule. Australia, a Commonwealth nation, has seen rising calls to sever ties with the monarchy, especially as movements for justice and reconciliation grow stronger. In contrast, Prince Harry has been more vocal in acknowledging the royal family's colonial past and its role in the transatlantic slave trade. In his memoir Spare, Harry emphasises the need for accountability and reparations, including acknowledging the family's complicity in colonialism and slavery. In an interview with CBS News, he expressed how colonialism left deep wounds in many regions under British rule, and advocated for reparations as part of the healing process. This creates a striking contrast between the two royals. While Harry openly calls for confronting colonial legacies, Charles's stance appears more traditional and reserved, reflecting the institution's hesitance to fully address historical wrongs. This difference is significant. Harry's openness to reparations and reconciliation places him more in line with modern global movements for justice, while Charles' more conservative approach risks alienating those calling for change. This latest confrontation highlights the widening gap between those who see the monarchy as outdated and unresponsive to historical injustice, and those, like Prince Harry, who believe in addressing colonial wrongs directly. As the monarchy faces increasing scrutiny, especially in places like Australia, how these issues are addressed will play a pivotal role in its future relevance on the global stage. King Charles III and Queen Camilla's royal tour of Australia has been drawing crowds across the country, but not all is as it seems. While the royal couple may appear to be welcomed by throngs of enthusiastic supporters, a closer look reveals a carefully orchestrated operation designed to give the illusion of widespread popularity. Much of this fabrication can be attributed to groups like the Australian Monarchist League, who have openly admitted to organising and giving crowds flags and posters to make the royal family seem more popular than they truly are. Groups like the Australian Monarchist League have actively taken it upon themselves to bring in people to boost crowd sizes and create a false sense of enthusiasm. In a recent Twitter post, the group boasted about the 5,000 plus people who joined them at St. Thomas Anglican Church to greet the King and Queen. The post, found here, shows just how strategic their involvement is, including handing out free flags to help create the visual effect of widespread support. The Australian Monarchist League has openly discussed their large-scale operations, even mentioning that they distributed 10,000 flags in Sydney alone. This level of organisation is not accidental. It's a concerted effort to make the monarchy appear far more popular than it really is. The League has essentially admitted that these crowds are carefully planned, not spontaneous demonstrations of genuine admiration. A key part of this manufactured spectacle involves ensuring that the right people, those supportive of the monarchy, are placed front and centre. Security at these events is notoriously tight, and it's well known that random members of the public rarely get close access to the King and Queen. Instead, the faces we see waving flags near the royal couple are often those pre-screened or organised by groups like the Australian Monarchist League. It's not difficult to see how this process works. The Monarchist League has an army of workers who not only distribute flags but also help organise the crowd and ensure that supporters are present in key locations. These renter crowds, made up of organised loyalists, create a false image of overwhelming public support. But the reality on the ground is much more nuanced. The Monarchist League has not been shy about the scale of their operations. In fact, they have declared that what they are doing is a massive undertaking, one that requires resources, planning, and coordination. Their public statements reveal just how artificial the royal couple's perceived popularity is. Distributing thousands of flags, organising thousands of people, and managing social media posts to promote this illusion. This is all part of a larger strategy to make the royal tour seem like a success. The League's posts across platforms reveal how they are engaging with this process. In a tweet following a royal visit in Sydney, they proclaimed, "We handed out hundreds of flags and look forward to seeing your photos." Such comments make it clear that this is not a spontaneous groundswell of monarchist fervour, but a carefully managed event designed to generate favourable optics. In the end, it's clear that much of the royal tour's so-called popularity is a product of strategic manipulation. Groups like the Australian Monarchist League play a pivotal role in shaping public perception, creating the illusion that King Charles and Camilla are beloved by the masses, when, in reality, their visit is met with apathy or quiet opposition by a large portion of the Australian population. The truth is, many Australians are questioning the relevance of the monarchy in the modern age. They see the royal family as out of touch with Australian values and increasingly irrelevant to the country's future. The waving flags and cheering crowds might look genuine, but the reality is that many of these events are carefully staged, with organised groups filling the gaps in public enthusiasm. For many, the sight of renter crowds and rented enthusiasm is not a reflection of admiration, but rather of an institution struggling to remain relevant in a world that is rapidly moving on from its colonial past.